Hi, everybody. So this lecture is really going to be sort of just a way to kind of bring some of the material that we were supposed to have this week, and just make sure that you get exposed to some of it. You had to read this work by Melissa Curtin on language and identity, in the United States and Taiwan, really kind of looking at the relationships between language and power and differential belonging, this thing she called differential belonging. And a lot of that material could be kind of complex, so it was a little unfortunate that we had like 3 snow days. This week of all weeks. So I just want to make another online lecture for you, in addition to the two that you have to watch for this Friday, just to make sure that you get exposed to that content because we're not going to have time to bring it into next week. And it will help you in writing your autobiographies. And that is one thing that I kind of want to go over real quick before we get into the content is your autobiographies. Really, what this autobiography is really kind of based on is this idea of differential belonging in the nation state. I was hoping to set you up for this a little bit more this week in class, but I'm going to do my best to do it online. Curtin is really kind of talking about the ways in which we use language to kind of assign differential belonging, right? Assigning one group a legitimized presence and while assigning other groups a delegitimized presence. And we're going to be kind of, in your papers, you're going to be kind of exploring that dynamic through your own personal experience. And then this is in part a preparation for the integrated assignment on February 20th, where rather than meeting in class, we're going to get together with the other classes and watch that film and have that discussion. And so for those of you who haven't signed up yet, last I checked, there were 3 categories left. I think in your case, this was for my other class, there are 4. So gender and sexuality, I think, still has a couple openings. Social class, I believe, does. No one signed up for ability and disability yet, and religious culture has some openings as well. You're going to sign up for one of these categories. I'm only allowing about 6 people per, and you're writing that 5 to 7 page autobiography on how you learn that concept through your personal experience. And so the basic criteria for this, you might have noticed that there isn't a rubric on the assignment, and that's intentional. 5 to 7 pages long, double spaced, and I mean 5 full pages. No outside sources. I want you to focus on your story and your social location, not someone else's. Sometimes we learn through like learning about other people, and that's fine if you want to talk about somebody else a little bit in your paper, but it needs to come back to you and your own positioning. I want you to focus on human interactions here. Don't write about media. A lot of people want to do that, and it really kind of takes away from real reflection. So focus on your human interactions. And again, focus on key moments in your life. So starting with your earliest memory and working your way forward. That does not mean document every year of your life, but rather key moments that you really learned something. So if you signed up for social class, like your earliest memory where you learned class and that you had a class position, and then from there, just other key moments where you really kind of learned class and your own positioning within class. And yeah, I don't provide a rubric on this because I want to give you all space to just write your story. And I found that if you put too much like requirements on it, it's kind of limiting for students in an assignment like this. So there is no rubric. It's worth 50 points, but there's really only a few ways you can lose points on this. So if you're meeting all of this criteria, you're going to get the points. First of all, meet the page requirement. That's one way you will lose points. So 5 full pages, not 4 pages and then like a few lines on the 5th page. 5 full pages. If you focus on someone other than yourself, then you might lose points. So like if you're writing about gender and sexuality and your entire paper is about a friend of yours who came out of the closet, that's their story, not yours. So you would lose points for that. And then, sometimes students don't want to do this. They don't want to write about themselves, so they write like a report with statistics and stuff trying to define the concept. You'll lose points if you do that too. And of course, plagiarism. Do not find one of my past students, take their paper, put your name on it, and submit it as your own. That might sound strange, but it has happened several times. I always know, don't do it. The risks to you are not worth it. You could be, worst case scenario, expelled, and it's just not worth it. So this paper is due on Thursday, February 14th before class, and you're going to submit this paper to 2 places. You're going to submit one to Canvas for me to grade, and then you're also going to submit one to your project group, so the group that you're doing the final project with. How you submit it to each other is up to you. You're going to have to get together and kind of figure out what's easiest for all of you. Some people email it, some people use Canvas. And what you're going to do is you're going to read all of your group members' autobiographies. That's why you're sending it to each other by Thursday, February 21st. That's going to be the part 2 of this final unit assignment. I'm going to explain that part more on Monday. And because I want you to focus on your journal and because I want you to really, or on your autobiography and really focus on writing this, I'm not going to have a journal due next Monday. So no journal due next Monday, just focus on your autobiography. And this practice can be a little difficult for students. So if you're ever having trouble or if you feel like you're getting stuck, I am willing to look over drafts for you, but you need to get them to me by 1 p.m. on Wednesday, February 13th. Anything sent to me after that, I won't look at. And I prefer that you email me directly. Like, don't send me a link through Canvas. Like, go on Outlook or whatever your email is and email me directly, anna.hackman@seattlecolleges.edu. That's because Outlook, my work email, has a feature for me to edit directly in the email, and it's just easier that way. And if you have any questions about this between now and then, just let me know. And one last thing that I kind of want to go over before we get into Curtin. So a lot of you, I was going through your online exercises on imagined community. There was something that kind of came up several times. You all had a really strong grasp of imagined communities. You understood this idea of imagined political community. You understood the 4 elements, that it's imagined as limited, imagined as sovereign, imagined as community. I didn't really see a lot of kind of failure to understand those components. And there did seem to be some understanding of like nation state and this idea of governance around a discourse of shared language, culture, customs. But one thing that came up several times throughout your online exercises that I want to address, and I think it's important to kind of think about as we go into this work by Curtin, is a lot of you didn't want to focus on the United States because you had this idea that the United States is not a nation state. The United States absolutely is a nation state. All of those pictures on the right, the bald eagle, the Statue of Liberty, apple pie, those are all things, like if you put them up there and just showed them, like, and I've done this in classes before with students, what are these, what country do you think of when you see these things? They say the United States pretty much automatically, right, without much thought. And that's because there is this idea of kind of shared symbolism and shared language and shared culture and values that the state really kind of utilizes in forming this kind of idea of nation. And that's what nation state means, is kind of like how the state governs using this discourse of shared language, culture, customs. And I think why some of you were having a hard time understanding the U.S. as a nation state is because you were very cognizant of diversity within the United States, right? So you could think of a lot of different languages and a lot of different customs and a lot of different, and you couldn't identify like kind of one thing. That's kind of the point. That was kind of Anderson's point, is that there isn't a homogeneous universal culture or shared language, that doesn't exist. But there's this idea that there is one. And so whatever that shared language or culture or custom is needs to be defined. It needs to be constructed. It's a discourse, and it's a discourse that's typically defined by the state. And what Anderson was arguing is that that's developed through the de-diversifying of language, that as language became less and less diverse and more uniform, it became possible to kind of impose these things, to spread it out and make it part of an imperialist project. And the United States has definitely done that. So, so the United States is in fact a nation state. And that idea of like nation and culture and custom and language kind of needing to be defined, and kind of needing to be defined as universal, that everyone has it, is really kind of the starting point for Melissa Curtin's work. So as you're kind of going into the next video, thinking about where we're going to get into social indexicality, be thinking about that. Be thinking about how these definitions of shared language and culture and customs, and this idea of a kind of a universality of it, really kind of comes into the maintenance of a nation from the state. Right? And so that concludes this video. So yeah, be thinking about that as you move on to the next one.